let's make a coffee first. Cheers! We are having a Earl Grey latte, which I basically do a shot of espresso, add in the tea bag for the Earl Grey tea, and then add sugar and milk, and it's so good. Anyways, welcome back to my channel, guys. If you're new here, my name is Paige and I recently left my 9-to-5 job. On this channel, we talk all things about changing your life and my whole journey with doing this. I would love if you would hit the subscribe button and join us on this journey. This month, I'm talking all about how I am working to change my life and preparing for a lot of new changes that are coming in the new year. I'm working through the Claim Your Power book by Mastin Kipp. The last thing we talked about was places in my life where I want change or where I need change. Today, we're going to be talking about the stories we tell ourselves. The really cool thing about Mastin Kipp's book, if you are not currently reading it as well, I definitely suggest it, and I'll have a link in the description for the book. Basically, he says with being stuck that it's more than just your behavior and your thoughts, etc. There's a 5-part system that he describes that starts from very shallow to the most deep, and it basically goes like this. You have your behaviors, which are led by the stories, thoughts, the mental level, basically, so how you describe your circumstances. Then it goes to your emotion, then your beliefs, so the meanings created from your past trauma, and then your original incident or the actual trauma you went through. If you think about it the other way, you basically start with your original incident or the trauma that you went through, which then leads you to making beliefs around your life, the meanings that you put towards the trauma that happened to you, which then brings you to your emotions, which are based off the beliefs or the meanings that you gave that experience, which then leads into the stories that you tell yourself, your thoughts, the things you think on a daily level, so like the mental level, which then brings you to your behavior. And the funny thing is, a lot of us focus on behavior change when we want to change our life. We're going to start waking up at 5 a.m. or we're going to start working out every day, or we're going to journal every day, and we just focus on these habits and these behaviors. But the truth is, the reason why you're not able to stick to these new habits and behaviors isn't because you're not capable or you don't have motivation. It's because there's 4 more layers beneath those that are the reason for these behaviors, and also are the reason for your bad behaviors. So like, I have a really bad habit of messing up my cuticles, something I've worked on a lot. And to be honest with you, it's because I had this specific blankie that I've had like my entire life that I would like mess with and mess up my fingers when I was stressed. That's a bad behavior that I have, but I don't just have that bad behavior because like, oh yeah, I just have it, it sucks. It's because that behavior is linked to a story or thoughts or something on the mental level, which is linked to an emotion, which is linked to a belief, which is a link to an original incident or trauma that I went through. Sounds kind of dramatic, but it's genuinely true. The book basically leads you through starting from the most shallow and getting to the deepest part of like why you are the way that you are. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the stories that I tell myself. So the first story that I tell myself is that I'm too emotional, irrational, or dramatic. And this comes from an experience I had in high school where someone told me that I was much too dramatic, which I think hit hard, not just because this person said it to me, but it was something that was very ingrained in me from a young age, that I was too emotional, irrational, and dramatic. So when this person said it to me, it really stuck with me. But the more I've gone through these journal prompts, I've realized that it's actually linked to a much further back original incident or trauma that I went through when I was in elementary school. So basically, to make a long story short, when I was in elementary school, I had a really hard time going to school, and I would feel sick, like physically nauseous, like every single day on my way to school. And I would cry and I would beg my mom not to make me go. And a lot of times she would not make me go because I would be so upset. And this is after my dad left. So like the year after my dad left my mom and my family, this started happening to me. And I almost didn't graduate, I think 3rd and 4th grade. 5th grade got a bit better, but I literally was at the limit of the amount of days I was allowed to miss. I had a really hard time going to school. And there was this one specific time where we were in the car line and I was crying and I didn't want to go, and I was begging my mom to let me just come to work with her. And I was in the back seat of our van, like freaking out, like wigging out so hard. And the car line was completely done, like school had started. And the vice principal came out, and she came and she was like, "You need to get out of this car right now and come inside." And I was like bawling. I'm like, "No, I don't want to leave my mom. Like, I don't want to go." And she told me that if I didn't get out of this car and go to school, that she was going to have to call Child Protective Services on my mom for not having me in school, and my mom was going to get in trouble because of me. That's what she said to me. So of course, I immediately got out of the car and I went to school. And it was one of the worst days of school like I literally ever had. Like I remember that day so clearly because it was so miserable because I did not want to be there. And now I felt like I was like messing up my mom's life by being so emotional. If I would tell my teachers I didn't feel good, because I would feel very physically nauseous because I was so upset, I would go to the clinic and they would say, oh, it's you, go to the guidance counselor. Like, you're not sick, you're just being dramatic, go to the guidance counselor. So I grew up being told over and over again that the feelings I had, my physical symptoms were not real, and that I was being dramatic or faking it, and that none of it was actually real. That obviously really affected me, because when this person said to me in high school, you're too dramatic, you're overly dramatic, it really hurt my feelings. And for a long time, I would say, oh, I'm too dramatic because this person said so. And I thought that it was because that person said so, but it wasn't. It was because it's linked to this original incident or trauma that I went through when I was in elementary school that really affected the way I looked at myself and how much I could trust myself, which is a big reason why I had such a hard time leaving my job, because I genuinely didn't trust myself for a really long time. I thought that my thoughts and my emotions were not worthy of listening to because they can't be trusted, they're irrational, and they're not real. So anyways, that is story number 1, and probably the one that hits me the most and I still deal with a lot to this day. Story number 2 is that no one understands me or no one cares, which I talked about in the first video regarding my healing journey. I definitely grew up thinking I was very different from everyone else. I grew up in like a wealthy area. Most of the kids at my school had wealthy parents and were coming from wealthy families, and I was not, because my dad left and my mom was a single mom and she was trying to provide for me and my 2 sisters. So I didn't have a lot of money growing up. I wasn't like extremely poor. I'm still very lucky for what we did have, but in comparison to my peers, I was not the most wealthy child. Because of that, a lot of people didn't understand me. Most of them didn't. I was called a charity case multiple times in elementary and middle school. I got made fun of for wearing my friends' hand-me-down clothing because I couldn't afford new clothes, and my entire wardrobe growing up was just my sister's clothes that they had passed down to me, which is nothing wrong with that. Like now, actually, it's funny. I have like this addiction to buying thrifted clothes and only wearing secondhand clothes. Probably comes from that. But I had some of my friends' parents not let their kids hang out with me because my sister had a drug addiction, so they wouldn't let their kids talk to me or hang out with me anymore. Because of all of this, I really thought that there was something wrong with me because of my circumstances, that the way my life was and the people in my life, my financial situation, made me less than and made me not worthy of people's friendship, which links to 2 of my stories I tell myself. The first one being that no one understands or no one cares, because a lot of people growing up didn't understand what was going on with me. And also the last one, which is people won't like me for my true self, or they're going to be offended by my true self. So my friends' parents telling them that they can't be around me anymore. Back to the no one understands me or cares. I think that is also linked to, I was in a long-term relationship throughout middle school and high school. It was like 4-year relationship I was in. There was a lot of times where my boyfriend didn't understand what I was going through because he didn't get it. I mean, he was young, he was a kid, so was I. He didn't understand a lot of my issues, and there was a lot of times where he would literally say to me, like, I don't understand why this is such a big deal, or why are you making such a big deal out of this? But for me, it was really traumatizing, like very specific situations in my life that were super traumatizing that would really upset me, and he would basically like downplay what I was feeling and be like, I don't get it, instead of just supporting. Which again, he was a kid, like he doesn't know any better. Definitely was another factor in my life that played into this idea that no one understands me or no one cares. Story number 3, I come second and what I want or need is less important than others. So I've talked on my channel before about how my senior year of high school, my mom got custody of my 2 nephews because my sister had a drug addiction, got her kids taken away, and was in and out of jail. So my youngest nephew at the time was a baby. He had just been born, and he actually had to be weaned off what my sister had been taking while she was pregnant. He needed a lot of care. I was 17 at the time. I started taking care of my oldest nephew, who was about 3 at the time. I would bring him to and from daycare in the morning. I would get him ready as well. I'd wake up, make him breakfast, get him ready, bring him to daycare, go to my classes, finish class, go to work, leave work, go pick him up from daycare, come home, feed him dinner, give him a bath, get him ready for bed, read him a bedtime story, put him to sleep. And a lot of nights I slept in the same bed as him, or he would come sleep in my room because he would have like night terrors and like freak out in the middle of the night. So yeah, it was a really rough year, and I did come second because I chose to make myself come second. There's a lot of times where I said no to things my senior year of high school because I wanted to take care of my nephew. Like, he was more important to me than doing the senior year of high school crap. Like, I didn't care about that stuff. Although it came from a place of love, like I wanted to put him first, I definitely felt I was obligated because it was my family. I would never change anything. If I went back, I would do the exact same thing. But what I would change is the thought that what I want is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. I can't even think about that. I need to ignore it. Looking back, I wish I hadn't told myself that so much. I definitely told myself of that a lot growing up because my sisters both had a lot of troubles when they were growing up after my dad left, because they were in their teenage years and I was like 8 years old. So like, I was a kid, I couldn't really comprehend my emotions. They were much older and had a lot more issues because of it. So I grew up with my mom having to deal with a lot of their problems, and I was a kid, so I definitely pushed a lot of my stuff down, which then led to it manifesting in physical issues like nausea and stuff like that, because I saw what my sisters were going through and what it was causing my mom to go through. And I was like, I can't make that any worse. Like, I can't make it any worse. That I need to be strong and do my best to not make this situation any worse. I've definitely this past year come to realize that I am married and we live on our own in a completely different state, and what I want and need is relevant and it does matter. And there's no reason for me to be a martyr and ignore what I want and need anymore, because I'm not taking care of anyone else right now. As long as me and my husband have a conversation and we agree on the direction that we're taking our lives, then there's no reason for me to not do things that I want or things that I need for myself. And that has been a hard change to make when you have literally pushed away what you want and what you need for a really long time. Hence this whole series and why I'm going through all this, right? Like, I'm trying to listen to myself more and do what I need for myself, which leaving my job was like the biggest step for me in getting towards this point. And the last one is that I'm trapped by my circumstances. Because a lot of the stuff that I've gone through in my life has felt very out of my control, I've definitely believed and started to believe that I am trapped by these circumstances. And what that has come to is, like the story I told at the beginning, me feeling trapped at school and not wanting to go to school, as well as that also happening when I had a job and feeling very anxious about going to work because I was like expected to be there between specific times. And that gave me a lot of anxiety because it brought back the feeling of being forced to go to school when I didn't feel well and didn't want to. So I think that has always been a big drive for me to want to work for myself or work something flexible, because I wanted to have that ability to not go to work if I wasn't feeling well or if I was feeling too anxious, or just have the option to say no, because I felt like my entire life I didn't have any options to say no and I just had to do things, and that brings me a lot of fear and anxiety. I was really lucky in high school. I worked as a nanny for this family who I still keep in touch with to this day. I worked at Panera Bread and I worked at Francesca's in the mall for periods of time in high school, but my main job was always nannying. There was times when I nannied, and then on top of that I worked at Francesca's, and then I eventually quit and just did nannying. But that nannying job like saved me, because there was a lot of times I was able to bring my nephew to the house with me and I would watch him and the two children, and Julie was cool with that, which was amazing and like so helpful. I needed that flexible type of job because the thing was, going there felt like going to another member of my family's house. I didn't feel as anxious about going there because even if I didn't feel good there, like I could just lay down. Like I didn't feel like stress, like, oh, I have to do this and that. It felt more just like, oh, I'm hanging out with people I love. So that was a really great job for me to have. And then when I went to college, and I worked this job in college for like 3 years, I worked in a data center at college, and my boss there was amazing. They were super understanding of mental health. I was able to basically email out of work the morning of if I just wasn't feeling up to it mentally. My boss was great about it. Like, he was not mean about it at all. He was so understanding, and I'm so grateful for that, which obviously me doing that made me make less money because like I would just not go to certain days of work, but I always still got my work done, so it was fine. He was just super understanding, so I never felt super trapped there. But at the beginning of the job I definitely did, because I wasn't at that point where I felt comfortable sharing my mental health issues, and calling out of work. So I would like force myself to go when I wasn't feeling up for it. Then fast forward to the job I had, my 9 to 5 in DC, it was obviously work from home. So it was kind of a different thing where I always felt like I should be working because it was work from home, of course. And I had a really hard time getting my work done though, because if I wasn't feeling up for it, I was already home. So it was easy for me to just say, I'm going to lay down for a few hours, see if I feel better. I just didn't have good boundaries with it because of that. And it was a high stress job. So I just always felt like I was behind and trying to play catch up. And then I would still always get my stuff done, but it just wasn't a great environment for me considering I deal with those struggles. Long story short, what I do need for the future with whatever it is either A, something flexible, B, something that's more like family oriented, like nannying, etc., or C, working in an environment where whatever boss I do have is extremely understanding of my mental health and like my situations and not mad or angry if I like call out of work kind of like last minute and things like that, as long as like I still get my work done. Basically a lower stress environment, long story short. Those are the stories I tell myself. This is a very like chatty video. I'm curious to know what stories you guys tell yourselves. Is there any specific beliefs that you feel are linked to behaviors in your life that you know are just the result of some story that you've told yourself is true when you really deep down know that it's not? For me, when I went through this exercise, I realized that these are all stories I tell myself, even though I would consciously say like, oh no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that that's true. Like, I don't know, that's not what I think, but I do. And I act like that's the truth. I act like those are like true values in my life that I must follow, and they're not. And the first step is being aware of them. Curious to hear what stories you guys tell yourself. That's all I got for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.